Lisa is the founder of one of New Mexico's cutting-edge technology corporations, which has gained national visibility through the company's community-focused civic tech. A strong advocate for women entrepreneurs and women in tech, she serves as a member of Congresswoman Grisham's Small Business Advisory Council, the Albuquerque Women's Entrepreneurial and Business Council, as well as others. She was named a New Mexico Woman of Influence in 2014, a 2014 Women in Tech honoree, and serves as a judge for the Stevie Awards Women in Business. Lisa is an icon next blogger for Huffington Post, a recognized leader in the fast-growing industries of mobile, civic tech, and women in STEM. And so with no further ado, I'm leaving you in very able hands. Lisa is going to tell you about how to think big for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for driving out here this morning. It means a lot to see you all get up this early on a Saturday. Last night, my husband and I had a conversation, and he had decided that no conference should start until about 10 o'clock in the morning. So the fact that you guys got up this early really means a lot. And what I wanted to start the day off with, since this is a conference that's supposed to be talking about how we think big, how do we expect more of ourselves, how do we hold ourselves accountable, I really started thinking about what it is that holds us back. And it really occurred to me that the stories we tell about ourselves and the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves are some of the things that we think are good stories, but may be actually holding us back. They may be the very thing that keeps us from just going all in. And my mom is here this morning, and that means so much to me, and my daughter is as well. And I think both of them will tell you that from the time they've known me, that I'm a storyteller. My mom has sometimes joked that the first words that came out of my mouth was, "Do you know what?" Because I always like to tell stories, and my family tells me that I pick pieces of stories that may have actually happened and put them together in completely new ways, and it's like it never happened that way. So I love stories, and I love being a storyteller, but it's occurred to me that sometimes the stories that we tell ourselves from the time we're very little and the stories we believe can really change what happens. This is a drawing that my daughter did when she was in high school, and I absolutely love it because it's the shadow of a woman, and then it's the words inside of her. And I honestly think that the words that we tell ourselves and the words that come from within us are the things that drive what we think of ourselves, what we believe we're capable of, and even how other people see us and what they think we're capable of. And so changing these words into something powerful is really one of the best ways that we can change what's possible. And so when we start thinking about the stories that we tell about what we're doing, I think sometimes we let ourselves off the hook by some of the things that we say. When we want to try something new and it's scary, or when the reward is so big and we're afraid we can't make it, we tell ourselves, I'm just doing this for fun. You know, and then if it didn't work, we just said, well, I really didn't try. If I would have tried, I could have done this. And if I wanted to, I could have. But the truth is that sometimes those are stories we tell so that the risk isn't so big. There's something that happened with my daughter when she was a senior, and just to tell you, from the time she was that small, she was a climber. We actually were holding her up, and she grabbed up on the lid, and she stuck. And so my husband was screaming at me and saying, get the ladder, I need something to get her down, and instead I got the camera. So that's the mom I am. So when she was about 7 or 8 years old, she started climbing for the first time. And this is one of the very first climbing competitions that she and her brother were in. And they actually both made it to nationals that year. And from that point forward, they were competitive rock climbers. And they trained, and it was their passion. And believe me, I did everything I could to make it a hobby. Because I wanted to take other vacations than going to nationals somewhere every year. But they had purpose, and they had commitment, and they had drive, and they took it seriously, and it made them happy. But then, my daughter's senior year, she really started to burn out, and she knew it was her last year. And so she said, okay, I want to do the competitive season because I want to be around my friends that I've had all these years. but I just want to do it for fun. And so my husband said, this is expensive, and either don't lie to yourself. Either you're having fun and you don't compete, or if you say you're competing, you go all in, because otherwise you're cheating yourself. And so my daughter decided it was worth it to take that year and be serious about it, like she had all those other years. And she made it to nationals her senior year again. And after that, she decided, okay, now I'm done. I've done this my whole time through school, but she finished well. And she finished at the top because she took it seriously. And so sometimes when you tell yourself, I'm doing this for fun, ask yourself, are you really doing it for fun? Because if you are, that's great. But if it actually means something very serious to you and you don't take it serious, you've cheated yourself out of the goal. And not making the goal really, really hurts. It does. I hate this whole thing of fail fast or, fail often. Really? Who wants to fail? I am so not interested in failing. But the truth is that failing is awful. But knowing we failed ourselves because we didn't put everything in, that hurts so much worse. So not cheating ourselves is so important. And I think there's another thing we tell ourselves, and that's at my age. And whether that's a teenager who we think is too young to do this thing that they have a dream about, or whether it's a 30-year-old mom who's saying, well, at my age it's too late to reinvent myself, or whether it's someone in her 50s who's saying, have I already peaked? I don't know that I can do this anymore. Or someone who's retired who always had a dream of doing something, but they never really had the opportunity because of life. And so when we think about, at our age, how do we limit ourselves? I love the story of Helen Hoover Sotomayor. She read a book in her teenage years that she fell in love with. And she took the next 50 years to write that book. She got interrupted her whole life by other obligations to write that book. She published it when she was 80 years old. So the next time you tell yourself, at my age, I can't do this yet, really? She did that at 80. And she actually won all kinds of awards for that book. It's a famous book. If you haven't ever read it, it's called And Ladies of the Club. It's well worth reading. And she wrote the book and published it when she was 80. So really, at my age is not a story we should be telling ourselves. And I'm sorry, Rachel, but the pictures I'm using are just because they're too good not to. But one of the things that I hear a lot when I hear people talking about what holds them back, they talk about their childhood. And they talk about that they didn't have the right opportunities, or they didn't have the right parents, or they didn't have the right education, or they lived in the wrong neighborhood. But the truth is, no matter what kind of childhood you had, or whether your siblings were a little amused at your rough experiences, your childhood should never be the thing that holds you back. My husband grew up in one of the roughest neighborhoods in Albuquerque. There were times there was no food in his refrigerator. He saw the gangs rise in the West Side while he was in school. His mother put them in band to make sure that they had other things to do with their lives. But on the very last day, he could actually enroll for college, and he didn't even know how. He showed up at UNM and he signed up, and he had enough money to pay for his first semester. And at the end of that semester, the counselor said, you're on a scholarship, correct? Because he had a 4.0. And he said, I don't know how to get one. And so that counselor went and helped him apply for a scholarship. And 5 years later, he graduated as a double E with a full ride. And he started in his first startup at that point. And he's had 3 successful startups since then. And so really, our childhood can either drive us to do more because we know we've got it inside of us because it's been rougher and we have nothing to lose, because we can survive at that point. So it should never be the thing that we use to limit ourselves, ever. The other thing is when we feel like we've already screwed up, so why try now? We've already ruined the opportunity. And I honestly think that how we reframe what happened to us is one of the most powerful ways that we can change the story that we tell ourselves. We all screw up. I do it several times a day. But it should never be the thing that holds us back. It really, it shouldn't. And I love this story about my son. about reframing what happened. My son lives in a dream world because he has so many ideas in his head that it's far more fun to live there than it is to actually pay attention to what he's supposed to be doing. So when the school had dress up as your favorite historical character day, he picked Paul Revere. He even had his sister help him make a horse off of a broken broomstick, and he got the whole outfit together, and he showed up at school this day on the wrong day. So he was the only one in school dressed that way. And that is how he spent his entire day at school. He galloped down the halls, yelling, "The British are coming." And he told the kids in his class, "No, I'm the only one who got to dress up today. You guys didn't get to." And they were all disappointed and upset and complained to the teacher that they didn't get to dress up that day too. And so instead of being disappointed and upset and mad at himself for doing something wrong, he turned that story into something that made him special and unique and different than everyone else, and he celebrated what he wanted to do, and he chose to define the story for himself. So the next time you screw up, look at it. Did you really screw up? Or did you just simply open up a new opportunity? Because sometimes the door that we actually needed to go through is when one closed and it felt like it was absolutely ruined. And that's exactly where we end up. When we thought something should work out this way, and it doesn't, we think everything is ruined. When we were married, my husband and I, we had our marriage certificate, and we kept it in a closet in the upstairs. And this was one of the first moments that I knew that my daughter was going to be a brilliant artist. And when I looked at that certificate, instead of thinking, our marriage certificate is ruined, I held it up and said, "Is this seriously married or what?" My kids colored on my marriage certificate. I don't know a better endorsement than that. And so we can look at something, and because it's changed from the way we saw it, we can think, it's ruined. We will never, ever have that back again the way it was. And that's right. But usually it's because it's better. And so it's really how we choose to see something as more valuable because of the change that has come with the experiences of life, or whether we think something's ruined. I love my marriage certificate now far more than I did when it was just a piece of paper that said, if everything's okay, I'm going to stay married. Because now, 27 years later, and all of those things on it, I know that that marriage certificate said I meant it. The other part that I think we tell ourselves is that we don't need advice. We know our vision, we know who we are, and no one else knows us better than us, so therefore we do not need advice. If we do this, this may be what happens to us. We think we're taking risks, and we think we are on the adventure of a lifetime. And if we are too smart and too big in ourselves to take advice from other people, we can sabotage our own efforts to move forward. And advice, especially when it's contrary to what we want to hear, never feels good. And it really, we feel like someone else just stomped on our dreams. And sometimes they really did. Sometimes advice isn't the right thing. But being open to taking it, being open to listening to it, and deciding for ourselves, does that fit? Do I need to hear it? And if I'm hearing those points from 15 different people, maybe it's time I stopped looking in the mirror for advice and I started hearing what other people are saying. Because when we do that, our experience just spread out from what we have to those 15 people that actually helped us. This is the story I've been telling for the last 5 years. And it's really occurred to me just in the last few weeks that this was the thing that was my exit. If I could tell everyone I'm not qualified for a thing that I do, I don't have a piece of paper on a wall that says you went to the right school, you have the right certificates. If I could tell people I'm not qualified for this, if it fails, well, I wasn't qualified. Who thought it could? But if it's a success, I just worked a miracle. And so I actually tell the story of being a stay-at-home mom. That all I ever wanted to do was be a stay-at-home mom, and that is the truth. It was the joy of my life. To spend 15 years raising my children and being the mother that I wanted to be. It was a huge privilege, and I will never, ever regret the days that I spent home with my kids. But I've used that as an excuse to hold myself back. I started out as a stay-at-home mom, so I'm running a tech company now. Really, if it doesn't work, I really just wanted to be a mom, so I can go back to that. That's my safety valve. And so the truth is, I am qualified because everything I've done brought me here. And so that proves that the qualifications were exactly what was needed to make this happen. And so when you have a dream, no matter how scary it is, no matter how unqualified you think you are, if you believe in it, if you have enough vision, if you have enough purpose, and you have the commitment to go through the rough stuff to get there, you are qualified. You are the only one that's qualified to live your life. No one else gets to live your life but you. And so I'd like to leave you with this thought. This is your story. Whatever you walk out of here today and you decide to do, this is yours, no one else's. Don't let someone else choose the words of your story. Not your family, not your teachers, not the people you work with, not the people you run into. They don't get to decide who your story is. Those are your words, own them. And the other part of that is someone else's journey is not yours, so don't own theirs. Whatever journey they're on is theirs. Support them, believe in them. Give them the space that they need to figure out who they are. Because when we try to decide and define someone else in a box, we've just limited our story to whether theirs works out the way we want it. And that is so limiting. We don't want to live that kind of life. My husband has been willing to let me completely change who I am as I'm approaching 50. He's run 2 companies and been successful, and yet he has been more than thrilled to step back and say, this is your time. And I'm doing what I love, and I will support whatever it takes for you to do that. That's how you let someone else live their story and decide what their words are. And decide today that the story that you tell will be one of courage, of purpose, of peace, of clarity, of vision, and joy. It doesn't mean things won't be hard, and it doesn't mean that we won't be terrified, because believe me, if you're not terrified, you're not challenging yourself far enough. Sometimes that terrifies because you're doing something stupid. And when it is, you need to listen to it. But you have a gut inside of you that's telling you whether that terrified is because you've challenged yourself to something that you can do, or because you have done something that you know is wrong. And when it's wrong, listen to it. But don't decide something's wrong because it got hard. Because nothing in life that is worth doing is going to be easy. Because if it was, none of us would make an effort, believe me. If I could feel this good about what I'm doing, and if I could be this passionate about what I'm doing and have made no effort, I don't know that it would have been worth it. It's the struggle. It's the difficulty of being awake at 2 in the morning and knowing I don't know that I can actually give that pitch tomorrow because I'm the only woman that's going to be in the room, and I'm not going to be taken as seriously as anyone else that's in there. But then getting up the next morning, getting dressed, walking in there, being sick to your stomach, not being able to eat, walking out on stage with your legs shaking so hard you're not sure you're going to be able to get off, and doing what you said you'd do. And when you walk off that stage, there is nothing that feels better than knowing I did that, I made myself, I grew today. And I remember one time I sat with my mom, and I shouldn't tell this story because it's going to make me sad, but I met my mom and dad for breakfast several mornings a month because my mom was the first one who invested in me. She believed in me. And so we would go and we would talk, and I had a really, really difficult month. And so my mom and my dad were sitting at the table, and I was just crying. I was ready to quit. I was ready to give up. And my dad, who had Alzheimer's, had very little speech left, but he understood the struggle, and he was very aware of what was going on. And he just stood up and he hugged me and he said, "You're my girl." And it was like, how do you ever back down from that? When your father, who you sat and told stories to when you were just 4 or 5 years old, and you listened to all of them when everyone else really wanted you to stop, and he really was patient through every mistake you made, when he is at the end of his journey and he's telling you, you're my girl, then you just don't quit. So that's what I'd leave you all. Don't quit. Tell your story. Make a new story. You will never be sorry. Thank you.